Bullshit.
It's the No BS Marketing Show. I'm Dave Mastovich, founder and CEO of Massolutions, the world's only no bullshit marketing firm. Today I'm excited to have a guest, John Lewis of Metz, Lewis, Brobman, Must O'Keefe, a law firm in the heart of downtown Pittsburgh. And John is someone who works a lot with businesses on how to improve their situations across the board, and we're going to dig deeply into that. John, welcome to the show.
Thanks a lot, Dave. Happy to be here.
I tell every guest when we're in the green room, we don't have a green room, folks, but I like to say that. When we're in the green room, I say the first question is always the stumper, and I say it sarcastically because it's a great question to get people talking, and that is, tell us about your career path, your journey.
Well, really, my career path, I've only had 3 jobs since I got out of law school 38 years ago. I started first at a public accounting firm as a tax lawyer, and that was incredible training. I did that for a couple of years. That public accounting firm was called Arthur Andersen. It's not around anymore. A lot of people know that it went out of business because of the Enron crisis. But when I left there, it was in good shape.
And starting out there is a big deal because at the time, that's a big brand name.
That was a big brand name, and that was an incredible training ground. You hear people that are of my generation that worked at large companies like IBM, and they will talk about the IBM way. Well, Arthur Andersen had a way, and it was a great training ground from a standpoint of how to conduct yourself professionally, work ethic. They were incredible at training people, not only technically, but also in terms of how to conduct business. So it was a tremendous place to start. It was like a boot camp almost.
And tax law, tell me about that. It sounds boring to me, but correct me if I'm wrong.
It is boring. So basically, I had an accounting degree out of undergraduate school. I was recruited by a lot of law firms when I was in law school to go into tax because of my accounting degree. And I gave that a shot, and even into my second job after Arthur Andersen, I continued to do tax work. Eventually, I still know a lot about tax. I don't hold myself out to be a tax lawyer, but it was a great experience in terms of the road to being a business lawyer.
When you chose to have an accounting degree prior to law school, what made you choose accounting?
So my mom wanted me to be a doctor. I went and started as a pre-med student, did not know how to study. And within the end of the first year, the head of the pre-med program pulled me aside and let me know that I needed to pick a different major outside of her program. So the school that I went to had a 100% graduation rate, or 100% medical school acceptance rate, and it was very clear to her that I was going to screw up that perfect record. So I had a couple of friends at the time who I played basketball with, and they were like, hey, come be an accounting major. So I took some summer school classes in intro in accounting. I caught up and finished as an accounting major. It ended up being the right thing for me.
So then you go to Arthur, which is landing, as I said, a great position.
Right.
Coming out of school, you do tax law, and you said that's been valuable to you. I agree with you on the structure. Anyone I've met that's worked for any of the big accounting firms or management consulting firms, whether it's Deloitte, Arthur, any of those, they come away with a understanding of organizational structure, and their organized and professionalism stands out across the board.
Yeah, sure.
So then you leave there, and where do you go to?
So I went to a law firm here in the city that's still a very well-known law firm, Dickey McCamey. Dickey McCamey is primarily a litigation firm, or it was at the time I joined it, and that's really their core practice area. But they had a small group at the time that were starting up a corporate practice, and I worked. I was really the first associate hire into that firm. So it was, again, another blessing. Arthur Andersen being a blessing in terms of getting a boot camp of professionalism. And then a second blessing at Dickey McCamey, getting an opportunity to basically be one of the first business lawyers there. It was a blessing and a curse. The curse was they didn't have a reputation in that area. The blessing was every single opportunity that came in landed on my desk.
How long were you at Dickey McCamey?
I was there for 13 years. And at Dickey McCamey, it was really interesting. I think the world of that firm, by the way. Still have a lot of good friends there. So if anybody there is listening, I have nothing but positives to say about the culture there. When I got there, by the time I was 34 years old, I was chairman of the corporate practice group. And it was too much responsibility for me at a young age. And what really eventually happened was that they started realizing that I had elevated too soon. So I was very successful there. I moved up the pay scale there quickly. I became a partner there quickly. I had a significant role in the firm, but it was almost too much too fast. And so in my 30s, I spent a lot of time there trying to run a practice group. Eventually, they came to me and said, "Hey, we've got a senior lawyer that we would like to bring in, and that senior lawyer is my law partner, Leroy Metz." And they brought Leroy in, and at the time, I resented him because they were kind of saying, the joke always was there was this hallway that everyone called Boardwalk because it was the nicest offices. So they demoted me, but they moved me up to Boardwalk because they still valued me as a partner, and they saw that ultimately my career was going to be successful. But when I first got told that Leroy was coming in, I didn't know the guy. He got hired without my knowledge, and he's been my law partner now for 22 years. But at the time, I didn't want to give him the time of day.
So he comes in, and at that point, he already has maybe 15 years experience.
Oh, much more.
Really?
Well, he's got about 10 more years experience than me. So he wasn't an old guy. He was still in he still is in the prime of his career. But he was just a little bit more senior than me.
So let's talk about this for a minute, because this show is about leadership and communication, and of course no BS versions of leadership and communication. So that's a natural reaction to be this young gun who comes in and is doing all this stuff, and you rose quickly, and you knew that you probably had rose a little too quickly, but yet you still have pride, and you know that you have an ego like all of us, and you know you were still producing things. It's natural to feel that way towards him. So what did he do to help overcome that, since obviously it worked out, like you two are tight?
So he didn't do anything. Nothing happened between us when we were at Dickey.
Okay.
What happened was Leroy got to Dickey. It did not meet his expectations in terms of what he wanted for his career. And then Leroy kind of led a group to start what is the Metz Lewis firm today. And I was still on the fence because I really had no relationship with Leroy at that point in time. I had relationships with the litigators at Dickey who I had become close friends with over 13 years. And so at that point in time, I had two options, which was Leroy was leading a group that was leaving, and I could go join that group that was really more of a business group. And it also had some litigators as well. Or alternatively, I could listen to the people at Dickey who wanted me to stay, step back in as chairman of the corporate group, and basically then rebuild a corporate group. And at that point in time, it was a very difficult decision for me. I had little kids. We had a new house, a mortgage. I wasn't really sure what to do. I probably agonized over it for about 10 days of going back and forth, and then eventually I made the decision to go join Leroy. My relationship with him now, 22 years later, is based upon 22 years of jointly, not just he and I, but a lot of other valuable founding partners that joined us in the beginning.
How many founding partners were at the beginning?
I think in the beginning there were 16 lawyers that left Dickey to start our firm.
And how many are still at Metz Lewis?
Well, I think that there's about 5 or 6 left. I'd say 6. And what's really interesting is we did this in I guess it was, I can't remember exactly, 1998. It was March of 1998. And what happened is 16 lawyers left. Within a year and a half, we were $2.5 million in debt. Our bank told us that we needed to repay the debt or find another bank, and we had lost half of our lawyers. So we had these big offices. We had the entire 22nd floor of 11 Stanwyck Street, and they were half empty. And it was probably scarier a year and a half in than it was when we first started, because at that point in time, we had a very serious chance that we were going to just financially fail. It was tough. And I think the closeness of the relationship now with some of these founding partners is based upon the fact that we all kind of locked arms and built our firm out of something that was a very precarious situation.
So the 5 names that are there now, Metz, Lewis, Probin, and Must O'Keefe, are all 5 of them part of that original?
John joined us right after. He took a flyer, and he joined us right after we started. But Chris Broadman, Brian Must, Leroy Metz, me, Barry Friedman are some of the first founders. And then one of my partners, Dave Horvitz, also joined us along with John O'Keefe in the very early years, and so did Larry Blair. Larry Blair joined us just a few years in as well. So some of these people I've been working with for more than 20 years now.
Mm-hmm. So it's scary. A year and a half in, you lost half of your lawyers, and you have this debt.
Yep.
How do you guys fix it without getting into too much of the arcane detail?
We were very careful about spending money. We were very careful about trying to provide excellent service and differentiate ourselves in ways that made us attract clients. And I think it was a combination of expertise, just raw willpower, and optimism. All of my partners know that I am somebody who can turn into a pessimist fast. I will often see some of the negative sides of things. Leroy Metz is the consummate optimist, always has a can-do attitude. And some of my other partners, Chris Broadman as well, has a can-do attitude. And so the bottom line is we just hunkered down, worked hard, tried to make the right hires, worked hard to get clients, and then focused on what drives us today, which is excellence in client service. So.
While that's all going on, and you are sometimes on the negative side, how did that work with, give me some examples of how maybe Chris and Leroy, they take what you're saying, because I found that I can jump to that negative too. They take what you're saying, because jumping to that negative isn't always bad, because you're pointing out things that could happen. You have to find plans for them, but you have to also try to remain positive. What are some of the techniques they use even today when they know you're going down that negative turn?
Oh, the technique. So no, actually I manipulate them to this day. So what happens is, Chris Chris, I hope you're listening to this.
Oh, he'll be listening.
If Chris, if we want to get something done, my best way of getting a decision made is to take the opposite approach and say, we absolutely need to go left if I want to go right. Because Chris is naturally somebody who wants to debate issues, discuss them. And so if you go left, Chris will go right. And then eventually I just agree with him that he's convinced me that his method is the right way to go.
So
that's a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek.
All this time I've not been managing Chris Broadman the right way. Full disclosure, Chris is in my Vistage group. Okay, so that's interesting.
And by the way, that was was an exaggeration.
Of course.
So, of course. Our leadership group, we know each other so well. We balance each other extremely well. We trust each other. So it's very comfortable for us to disagree, because we know that the disagreement isn't about lack of respect. The disagreement is about a need to consider various views before you arrive at the consensus as to what the right decision is. So,
you guys have that scary time, which I think right now is going to be a scary time. We're recording on the 17th of March, and we're at the beginning of what's going to get worse. And I know that's a scary time for Mass Solutions and most of my clients as well. So you were at a scary time with that $2.5 million. How long did it take you guys to get to where there was some solid ground? Was it about a year?
Oh, no. It took about 5, 6, 7 years.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And so by that point in time, we're around 2008 and the recession hits. And so, and we're a business transaction firm. So it then took us until about 2010, maybe 12 years into our now 22-year run, maybe 2009, maybe halfway into our, we were doing well. We never missed a rent check. We never missed a payroll. Let me make something clear. We've never been late on a bill. We were very financially careful. But the real growth did occur beginning with the post-2008 expansion. And with what we do representing middle market businesses, privately owned businesses, and handling business transactional work and also business litigation, as businesses started succeeding in 2009, and we've had kind of now up until last couple of weeks, an 11-year run of an expansion of our economy, that we've really ridden a great wave over those last 11 years.
One of the things I want to ask you is about how you have built your brand and reputation, because prior to meeting you, I had heard your name in like about a 3-year period. I'd probably heard your name 30 times. So you were kind of like this weird celebrity. I was walking through Market Square the one day, and a mutual friend of ours calls me over. And he goes, "This is John Lewis." And I remember I actually went, "John Lewis." And then I felt like a dork, because it's like I was treating you like you were a rock star. But I'd heard your name so many times that, and I don't know why I never did this. I never Googled you, never looked at you online or anything. So I didn't even know what you looked like. But I had heard your name a lot. So and I'm sort of your target because I'm a small, medium, mid-market business.
Right.
And I work with a ton of people that you work with. And so it's coincidentally, some of my clients were your clients. You did a really good job of building your personal brand name over that 10-year period, probably. Talk to me about that, because you do have traction in this Pittsburgh market where people know your name. They also know Chris's name really well for the size of your firm. Yeah.
So I got 2 answers to that. First of all, I have never consciously built my brand. So I haven't retained professionals to do it. We haven't, and Chris, neither of us have made a conscious effort to build our brand. I think that the real building of our brand is a combination of having the correct culture as a business, and that culture flows through every employee and gets recommunicated on a regular basis. And by the way, when people join our firm, they say, "Wow, this place is different than every other law firm I've worked." We definitely have a non-law firm culture. So first of all, my brand is a function, to the extent I have one. You might have overstated it a little bit, but to the extent that I have a brand, it's a function of just having my name on the door at a law firm that has the right people, the right culture, and it's probably something that I deserve 10% credit for, and 90% being in the right place.
Well, I appreciate that, the humble aspect. And what I was going to say is, I agree that I would say your brand is strong with your network. I didn't know much about Metz Lewis Brodman, and that's not the brand I'm talking about. I'm not talking about a Pepsi brand. But what I think you guys have done, and it's your whole firm, but particularly you and Chris, just because of, I think, your strong networks, is you have people that mention you when they're telling their story. And I guess that's the way I would describe it. I'd be talking to a company. Let's say they're a $38 million a year in total top line revenue company, 150 employees, whatever, making this all up. And I'd be talking about their marketing, their messaging, and they would then somehow mention, well, John Lewis helped us with this, and John Lewis helped us get over this point. So that's where I think you have people talking about you maybe more than is a little normal. Like, in
Well,
other words, they're bringing you up when they don't have to.
And that's just hard work, client service, and making a lot of lawyers think that because they went to law school that the most important thing is to prove to people how smart you are. And that's what gets business owners alienated with lawyers, because too many lawyers are so focused on showing people their intelligence that they lose track of what they really should be doing, which is putting themselves in the client's seat and saying, what's this client's problem? The client doesn't want to be educated about the law. I mean, a little bit they do, but they really want a lawyer to say, I'm putting myself in your seat. If I were making this business decision, if I were you, I would make this decision. Here's why. Here and then basically helping the client make tough business decisions that have legal implications. And that's how we differentiate ourselves. And that's what goes through our entire firm. And I think that's then people appreciate that, and then they bring our names up. So that's probably what it is.
Well, talk to me about what it is you particular do, because I know the firm, now I do know a lot more about the firm from getting to know you and Chris, has all these attorneys and all these specialties, but what do you personally do for your clients?
That's a really hard question. I try to be genuine. I commit to memory a lot of information about my client's business. So, eventually this brain, I guess, gets filled up or stops functioning. Hopefully that's way off in the future. But, I know my clients' businesses. I know what's important to them. I know what they worry about. I know what their business risks are. I know who their biggest customers are. So I commit a lot to memory about their business. So if something is happening that they come to me, they don't have to start all over explaining things. I will basically know, oh yeah, your largest customer is Walmart, and we've got this issue with Walmart's supply chain. So I already know that they might have an issue with their largest customer being able to purchase products or something of that nature. So I try to commit to memory. And I also know the client's personal situations.
You've told me, and so has Chris, that a lot of your clients are in the mid-market. Yeah. And I know that when I talk to an accounting firm and I talk to other types of firms and ask that question, a lot of people define that their own way, slightly different. So what is the mid-market to you?
So we're in Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh definition of middle market is different than a Wall Street definition of middle market. So basically, I've got some clients that I really appreciate working for that are 5 million, 6 million of revenues and 15 employees or something of that nature. They still have business legal issues, and they still need good advice. And I like working with those businesses. A lot of people would call those small businesses. The middle market are 20 million, 30 million, 50 million, up to 150 million of revenues is really the Pittsburgh definition of middle market, and we have a lot of core clients in that size range. So we have a lot of clients outside of Pittsburgh as well.
I know you've taught. Well, let's talk about that for a minute, because being in the heart of Pittsburgh with your office here downtown, and Pittsburgh being your biggest market, talk about the markets beyond Pittsburgh.
Well, it's really weird because the best example. Examples or telling you the story might be a better way to do this. I'm working on 2 projects right now for a $5 billion private equity fund that is based in the Northeast at a major city, and they hired us in November. I'm handling a $50 million acquisition and a $63 million acquisition for them right now, and they hired us because they were using a 2,000 lawyer law firm and still use this very, very large law firm for their big deals. They needed to find a firm that can handle M&A work, complex tax work, and handle what they consider to be small deals, $50 million deals. And they basically called us up and said, we got your name from 3 different people. We've never heard of you. Who in the heck are you guys? Within 24 hours, I had references to them. Well, the same day, I had reference. I said, just call any one of these 20 people and ask about us. The next day, they hired us for the first deal. And so we closed their first deal on January 2nd. We have 2 more deals for them going on. I've never even met the client yet. Never even met him in person. But this is this is a type of client that we are tending to get because of our reputation.
When you mention buying and selling businesses, handling the mergers and acquisitions, talk about that, because I think that many of our listeners are entrepreneurs, CEOs, presidents, founders. Talk about that. So when you come in, talk about both sides, how sometimes maybe you guys run into someone who hasn't thought of selling their business, or another instance you're working for the PE firm. Talk about both sides of that M&A.
Yeah, so I like both. I like both. I like representing sellers and buyers. Representing a seller is I used to think that it was easier to handle the sales side of a transaction than was to handle the buy side of the transaction, and over the years it's really flipped for me. Handling the sales side of an owner's business is an exercise in not only doing the correct legal work, but understanding the relationship that they have with all their other advisors, also understanding the emotions that a business owner goes through in terms of selling their business. It's a really tough exercise in hand holding, and because business sales are kind of like riding a roller coaster. There are some days that everything looks great, then the next day, you're doing the plunge on the Phantom's Revenge because of something bad has happened. And dealing with a sale of a business is really interesting. On the buy side, I find it fascinating, and what's rewarding for me is a client will call us up and say I'm buying this business, and as we start looking at it and seeing it in due diligence, every week of the year, I am astonished how people in the United States have developed businesses and make money and earn money. There's so many. We just handled the acquisition of a business where somebody installs and maintains gas lines underneath bridges, and I didn't even know that there were natural gas lines underneath bridges. And here we are, Pittsburgh, the city of bridges. Did any of us ever think, like, how does natural gas make it from one side of the Mon to the other? Well, there are gas lines under bridges. And so, and there's a business in Charlotte, North Carolina that does nothing but that. And it's a very profitable company.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah. All the time, I learn about how people make money, employ people, keep our economy going. And frankly, as a lawyer, I'm envious. I wish I was that. I wish I had the skills that a lot of these business owners have. As lawyers, we're just service providers that provides a fairly narrow discipline to them.
Talk about potential sellers. I work a lot with companies that are in that middle market size, and they might be a $50 million a year company or a $20 million a year company. And I'm also impressed with how these companies make money and how creative they can be to get through the ups and downs of running a business. Talk about how that works. Have you ever approached someone and kind of just talked to them and said, where are you with your situation? And then they came back and said, well, I have a couple kids, but they don't seem interested. I thought they were going to take it over. What happens at that point? Do you help someone? Do you coach someone along? Yeah,
to some degree. I mean, we're not typically approaching business owners. We are typically referred in.
Okay.
So, we're fortunate right now that that the business does come to us. I mean, we do a lot of branding, and we do, as you know, very well. We do a lot of messaging to make sure that our message stays strong. But in terms of those business owners, it is I draw upon thousands and thousands of experiences that I've had over the course of my career to try to figure out what the client needs, what is most important to them, and how to work with a particular client, because every set of circumstances is different. Some people have businesses that they have children involved in, but they deep down know that they probably should sell it and not leave it to the next generation to run it. And that's one conversation, and that's an approach that you just can't meet them in the first 10 minutes and smack them in the face, because you have to allow them to kind of go through the therapy session of arriving at that conclusion on their own by asking them some of the right questions. And then once they answer some of those questions, it's the answer is to, well, I need to sell now, because it's better off for my family that I sell my business now, rather than to put child A and child B, pitting them against each other after I'm gone. So we recently handled the purchase of a business by a young man who came to realize that he could not work extremely well with his father-in-law, and he was set up to take over the business. And he made the decision that he didn't want at Thanksgiving dinner to be staring across the table at somebody that he had a stressful work relationship with. So he went into his father-in-law and said, I think you should keep running this company, and I should go out and try to find a small business to purchase and go run myself. And things like that can keep families together.
So that's making an impact way beyond the bottom line.
Sometimes, yeah.
Well, we kind of talked a little bit about when you had that situation when you rose really fast, and so that might have qualified for this. But one of the questions that I ask is, I often say, when were you the BSer? When maybe you were the difficult boss, difficult partner, weren't communicating as well as you could have, or maybe your leadership wasn't where it needed to be. What did you do that might help our audience? So when were you the BSer? How'd you fix it?
I've never been a BSer,
I knew that was coming.
So no, I don't really know how to answer that question. I mean, I try to be as transparent as possible. I think I know when I'm the BSer with my own leadership team at the firm when I want something and I think that I'm right and they're wrong. I will tend to paint the picture as to why we should be doing something in a way that tries to get them to agree with me. Unfortunately, because they've known me for so long, they know when I'm doing it at this point in time. But yeah, I think we all have a little bit of that. We tend to skew our stories to match the result we want. At least as a lawyer, you learn to be objective and you learn to be fact-based, not opinion-based or emotion-based. So I think if you would ask a lot of lawyers, like, when are you the BSer? The one blessing of law school is a 3-year indoctrination in what are the facts, not what are your opinions, but what are the facts. Get to the truth, get to the facts. And it teaches you to think logically. So I don't think that I have a strong record of being a BSer, mostly because of the business that I'm in.
One of the things I know, we both use predictive index, and I know your PI profile because it's similar to mine. So I think where you might have some times where you're challenging to others is you're a strong idea person. And so you're pretty confident in your ideas. And so I know that I run that risk as well. And so what I've always had to work on, and I'm sure you have as well, is you want to make sure you're not looking like you're plowing through with your passion.
Yeah, I'm an impatient person too. And so I tend to believe in my ideas and want to get to them as fast as possible. And so when I have to check myself, it's to let others express their opinions talk things out. And when I do control my natural tendencies and sit back and let other people put ideas out there, I often realize that I need to do that more often. So.
It's all part of personal growth and professional growth. We've had a great conversation with John Lewis. I want to make sure that I cover everything. So is there any type of tip or tool? I often ask the guests, is there something you use on a regular basis? Is there a way you organize your day? Is your favorite app? Is there a motto you live by? Just any tip or tool that you think could help our audience that you can think of that and describe how it's helped you.
So I don't use a lot of tools. I mean, the one tool that I use a lot is exercise. And so I think it's really important if you're in a high stress environment, if you're in a white collar setting, that while I could use to stand to lose some weight, I have been very fanatical about my exercise and getting it regularly over the course of for as long as I can remember. My body isn't as strong as it used to be. I can't run a marathon anymore. I can't ride 100 miles on a bike in a day like I used to a long time ago. And even when I do a yoga class, I usually wake up the next morning with more pain than I can believe. But exercise, I think, is a good way to calm the mind, de-stress yourself. And the only other tool that I use, this is really a basic, but I typically, when I'm driving into work, I try to create a number one, a number two, and a number three of things that I have to get accomplished that day that are critical issues. And so the way that I get work done and stay in contact with clients, because once you hit the office, you can get distracted 50 different times, 50, maybe 150 times in a day. And so I typically say to myself, make sure that when you've gone home, complete items 1, 2, and 3, which are my high priority. These are the things that are the most important. And then if something else comes up, it typically is going to have to be number 4.
That's a great approach, John. Is there anything else you'd like to add, or is there a question you thought I'd ask that I didn't?
No, I mean, I appreciate you having me. This has really been fun.
Great. And thank you to our loyal No BSers for listening to John Lewis of Metz, Lewis, Brobman, Must O'Keefe in our episode here recorded in our studios in bold, beautiful downtown Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Remember, ask yourself, what's the big idea? And build your story around the answer. It's all about bold solutions, no BS.